let's talk about why investment bankers actually work so many hours. What's up, guys? It is your boy Jerome, back at it with another video. For those of you that are new to this channel, I started off as an electrical engineer before going back to business school at UNC's Keenan Flagler and then becoming an investment banker for about the last year of my life. Recently, I shared a video on TikTok where I talked about how investment banking hours are not exaggerated, and oftentimes investment bankers are averaging between 80 and 100 hours a week. At my absolute worst, I worked 120 hours a week, and I did it for 3 weeks straight. Naturally, the biggest question that I got on that video that kinda sorta blew up was, what do you guys actually do for that many hours out of the day? Good question. So I'm here to answer that for you guys. We're gonna break this video up into 5 main parts. We've got pitches, sim drafting, the projection model, diligence, and finally just some general administrative tasks that every investment banker has to do. Well, every junior investment banker has to do. Just to provide a little bit extra context before we jump right into it, remember, investment banking is one of those industries that demands perfection, meaning you're expected to be 100% perfect every single time before some piece of work that you're working on is going up to your boss for review. And I want to be clear that while this may not be the experience for everyone with every single boss that they might have, that is the general kind of feeling in the industry, and that feeling of the industry inevitably puts pressure on each individual person. Let's also remember that at my level, I was an associate, so there's always going to be 3 or 4 layers of people above you. You've got the VP, the director, and then always at least one MD, but sometimes more. Also, your clients are paying you a lot of money, so they also, rightfully so, are expecting perfection. And trust me, they will not be shy about yelling at you in front of your team. Remember that every investment banker is going to be working on multiple deals, taking up multiple hours, because you're going to be doing these things for all of those deals. And with that, let's jump right into it with pitches. Pitches are the very first part of every single deal life cycle. And it's essentially where your firm will go to a client, a potential client, and essentially tell them why we're the best and why we should be their advisor in terms of some potential sale that they're considering to a bigger buyer. This pitch presentation is typically going to consist of maybe a 30 to 50 page document that goes over kind of the industry that the client is in, background on our firm, how we would position that company for a sale, potential buyers that we think would fit that profile, and most importantly, how much we would value their company at. One of the reasons why pitching is one of the most strenuous things you can do is because oftentimes you're in a situation where you're in a big time crunch and you only have 1 or 2 weeks to come up with this 50-page document. And when you're working for a high caliber middle market firm like I was, you're competing for that business against the names like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Guggenheim, the really top dogs out there. So as a middle market firm, your stuff really has to be perfect. And that's a lot more added pressure. Now, during the actual creation of the pitch, you end up pulling a lot of late nights because everyone is on that time crunch. You'll make progress on your pages during the day, maybe from 9 to 5, and then you'll send it to your VP for review. And oftentimes they will review in the evening hours and then return something to you around 9, 10 p.m. and ask to see a revised version in the morning. So now all of a sudden you're up all night trying to make all of those revisions that they suggested. And again, you're on that compressed, tight timeline. So you kind of have to get it done for the morning like they asked. In addition to making those pages, you're going to be wanting to make some sort of valuation model so you can actually value the company. Usually you can do that using comparable companies or some sort of comparable transaction that's happened in the past, or a more mathematical approach like a DCF or LBO. And for those of you that don't know what those are, make sure to smash that like button down below and subscribe to the channel, and I will make that video for you, explaining the different valuation methods and comparing them to one another and how they kind of are the same, but maybe sometimes different. So again, with this pitch deck, because there are 3 or 4 layers of people above you, there's gonna be a lot of ideas and opinions and a lot of back and forth. And it's gonna be a lot of days back to back of you sending in your work by 5, you getting comments at 9 or 10 at night, and then they'll wanna see something again in the morning first thing. Then also on the actual day of the pitch, you as a junior person are gonna be taking notes. You'll travel to the client, and while you're taking notes, you can't do any of your other deal work for your other deals, so you kind of end up just wasting a full day. And then when you get back to your hotel room that evening, all of the work that has piled up is now yours to do, again, into the late hours of the evening. So then it's done first thing in the morning. The worst part is if for whatever reason you end up losing the pitch, they go with a different bank, or they decide that they don't want to go through a sale process right now or whatever, then all of a sudden you've done all of that hard work for no reason. Let's move on to the next section, which is sim drafting, which kind of sort of suffers from the same problems that the pitch does. The sim, or the confidential information memorandum, is basically a book that bankers will write to then send to buyers to tell the story of your client's company. This is typically going to include an overview of the company, any types of products or services that they offer, maybe an overview on the market itself, any sort of special projects or mergers that they're looking at to fuel their growth, and then finally, the financial health of the company. Similar to the pitch, these documents are usually between 60 to 80 pages or so to be able to tell the full story. And again, you're gonna be working on these pages from, call it 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., and then you're gonna send it in for comments. You'll get those comments that evening, and then asked to return a revised version first thing in the morning. So again, you're up late in the night. And remember, perfection is the name of the game here. So now all of a sudden, me as an investment banker, I not only have to write the story of this company along with my team, I have to be a graphic designer to make sure all of the graphics look pretty, all the formats are matching, and sometimes even come up with the actual pictures that go in there. I don't know about you guys, but I got my degrees in engineering and in business, not in graphic design. And so often it would take me several hours to make a page that looked really, really nice. And someone that works at a bulge bracket bank, tell me if this rumor is true. I've heard that you guys have like graphics teams or presentation teams where you just send your unformatted sim to them and they like make all the graphics and things that go in there. Like, is that true? Because if that is, good for you. For me, by the end of it, I could make a really, really nice looking page in about an hour or 2. If you have an 80-page document, let's just assume an hour and a half per page, that comes out to about 120 hours for that sim. Plus, let's assume that you have about 4 rounds of back and forth with your seniors, just making sure that it's perfect and they'll give you comments and all that stuff. So for that, let's just multiply that number by 2 and say it takes 240 hours for a first draft that your client gets to see. As far as I've seen, usually a sim takes anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks. So at 240 hours or so, you're looking at about 40 to 60 hours per week in just drafting a sim. And let's remember, that's for one single sim on one single deal. And for those of you who caught that, I said it takes that much time for a first draft, because then it goes to the client. The CEO will have his own comments, his team will have comments. If they're owned by private equity, the private equity partners and associates will also have comments. And that makes that entire sim drafting process take anywhere between 2 to 3 months, and hopefully that timeline doesn't get compressed. And again, remember, that is just one sim for one deal. And maybe you have another pitch that you're working on as well, or God forbid, a second sim on a second deal. That would be terrible. And yes, you're not doing this work by yourself. Usually you'll have an analyst with you. In my case, it was usually 2 people, sometimes 3 that's working on all this stuff. But remember, everyone's working on multiple things. So honestly, the hours kind of add up. Which, speaking of analysts, let's talk about one thing that analysts normally do and the associate normally reviews: projection models. Okay, so a projection model is basically just that. It is a projection of the company's financial performance over, let's say, the next 5 years, and then also a historical look at maybe the last 2 or 3 years on how they've done. What we do is we make some assumptions that are obviously grounded in some amount of truth on what we expect revenue growth to be, or how much we expect their expenses to go up by. Maybe they're adding some key employees, how much revenue their new special projects are gonna bring in, or new acquisitions are gonna bring in. We look at all of those things to be able to show the final bottom line number of this company, so then we can use that to value that company. And yes, usually the projection model is something that the analyst is gonna build, but not always. Honestly, in my first deal that I worked on, my boss specifically asked me to build the projection model because he was like, hey Jerome, if you're gonna be reviewing these one of these days, it'd be a good idea for you to know how to build one, which, yeah, duh, that makes sense. And while it was super difficult, I am glad that I did it because honestly, I learned a lot. The problem with the projection model is oftentimes it's just complex to build. The data that you get from the company is often bad or just missing pieces. Sometimes you mess up your formulas and now you're looking for just the tiniest discrepancy between what the company sent you and what your model shows you. It gets to be a lot really quickly. And don't even get me started. Making sure that the numbers tie out is an absolute nightmare. Similar to pitches and sim drafting, your model obviously also needs to go through multiple rounds of review for formatting, for formulas, whatever. And to add another piece of complexity to it, oftentimes you only have one person working on the model, because when you're working in Excel, just having multiple people in there are too many, what do they say? Too many cooks in the kitchen, or too many chefs in the kitchen, whatever. There are too many people in there. You might run over each other's formulas. One person might do a calculation somewhere and then not bring it in the right place, or they're thinking about it differently. It just can get really messy really quickly, so it just makes more sense to have one person own it and one person do it. It really is such a pain. Okay, so now that we've won the pitch, we've written the sim, made the projection model, and sent it to buyers, and now they're all so interested in your company, they all want to get a shot to talk to them. It is time to let those people do some due diligence. For the sake of time in this video, I'm actually skipping over a couple pieces like the actual buyer outreach or management presentations, or IOIs or LOIs. But if you want the full deal life cycle in a video as well, make sure to like and subscribe, and I can make that video for you guys too. So due diligence. During due diligence, buyers are essentially just trying to make sure that the story that you've told in your sim is accurate. They'll ask the company more details about their financial health, HR policies, operational metrics, legal stuff, IT, all sorts of different things, and they will go deep into some of those topics. The most annoying part about diligence is if you end up having a large group of buyers, say even 10, and each of those 10 buyers has 100 questions, you're now answering 1,000 questions. This could be in the form of a written response or creating some sort of tables or charts or whatever, but either way, you as the analyst or associate are the ones that are creating all of those new materials. And again, of course, you're gonna be going through the multiple rounds of reviews and comments with your VPs and MDs. The other extremely annoying part about diligence is all of the extra meetings that now are on your calendar. You are legitimately in meetings all day from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And you're not just sitting there able to do other work. You are taking notes always, because you have to distribute those to your senior people, or you're actively involved in those meetings. And now that you've wasted your entire day in meetings, the real work can actually begin. All of those 1,000 questions that I talked about earlier, you can start answering those now that it's 5 p.m. And yes, you will often be going on into the late hours of the night. I think I'm starting to sense a pattern here. You better hope that you're not working on another sim or a pitch. Oh, but you are. The rest of what little time you have is gonna go towards all of these small administrative tasks. As the analyst or associate, you're gonna be sending any sort of meeting invite, whether that's internal, external, to buyers, to clients. If you close a deal, you're the one that's gonna be planning some sort of closing event that's supposed to be a celebration, but really, it just puts so much stress on you because everyone's pressuring you to pick the venue and to pick the hotels and to pick the flights. Anyways, I'm not mad. I'm not mad. But yes, these are just the random little everyday tasks that everyone's gonna ask you to do all the time because you're the lowest person on the totem pole. Here is a realistic example of what an investment banking associate could be working on that takes up so much time in their day. Let's say they're working on 3 deals at the same time, one pitch, one that's in sim drafting, and another one that is in due diligence. This person is likely going to be on diligence calls all of the working day from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., whether that's with your internal team or with your client or even potentially with a buyer. You're going to be either leading those meetings or at the very least taking notes that you can send around to your internal team. Then, say around 5 p.m. or so, you start working on your pitch because the VP wants to see some sort of progress tonight. So you finish up around, let's call it 10 p.m. So then you eat a quick dinner and maybe you work on 1 or 2 pages of the sim that you have completely ignored all day, along with you should probably go apologize to your analyst or whoever else is working on that sim because you've been completely unavailable all day. Then around midnight or so, you get comments back from your VP telling you, hey, I need to see this in the morning because we have an internal pitch call for all of us and this has to be ready in the morning. You're now up until 3 a.m. or so, at which point you finally decide to drive home and you go to sleep for maybe, let's call it 3 hours, because you need to be awake for another full day of diligence calls and you need to prepare because you're leading some of them. Oh, and you missed your deadline to turn in a draft of your sim, so your analyst over there is pissed at you. I know that sounds like a super ridiculous example, but it's really not. It happens every day. And unfortunately, the answer just isn't as simple as hiring more people. A lot of these investment banks, the way that they work, they're just gonna try to do more deals, not necessarily add more bodies to the deals they're already doing. I know that was a super long-winded example, but I hope that helps you guys understand why investment banking hours are in fact not exaggerated. If you all enjoyed this video, make sure to smash that like button down below and subscribe to the channel. Share this video with your investment banking friends or your friends that are thinking about getting into investment banking. Maybe it'll be useful for them. And also, people have been sending me tons of questions over on my Instagram at JeromeVaz14. So if you have a question or you want to DM me, feel free to give me a follow over there, and then I'll try to answer everyone's questions. Thank you guys for watching this video, and as always, my name's Jerome, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.